forum this morning will be about a document that Friends Meeting of Austin received, the Urgent Call to the Religious Society of Friends, which has been created by a number of friends around the country. And yeah, I thought it would be important, especially to talk about it today, because there's actually, the national meeting is this afternoon. So if you're interested in that after this conversation, I'll mention this again at the end, but you can register for that at www.quakercall.net. I believe the Zoom call will be at 3 p.m. Eastern, so 2 p.m. Central. It'll go for, I think, a couple hours. So if you'd like to continue to discuss these things with Quakers sort of around the country, that will be happening later today. This sort of is a call to, as a community, just consider these questions. There are a couple of queries as well as a whole series of possible actions that this national organization is calling for us to consider. So before we do that, though, I just thought it might be nice to just sort of together read through the urgent call here. I was wondering if people might sort of join me in reading this. If someone wouldn't mind reading this first paragraph here real quick.
I'll start. An urgent call to the Religious Society of Friends, May 2022. We Quakers, members of the Religious Society of Friends, hold strongly to the principle of speaking truth with integrity. We ground our speaking truth in our worship and our searching of ourselves as we listen deeply and honestly within and across all differences. Our testimony to the world includes standing up for spiritually discerned truth, the equality of all persons, the peaceful resolution of conflicts, and respect and care for neighbors and the earth. Right now, we see many forces at work in our country and the world that are undermining these basic values. Accordingly, we call on friends everywhere to act.
Somebody like to read the second paragraph?
In this country in 2020, we witnessed an attempted coup. The January 6th assault on the Capitol was a deliberate, violent attempt to prevent Joe Biden, the clear winner of the 2020 election, from taking office and keeping then-President Donald Trump in power. To maintain that the last election was riddled with fraud is demonstrably false. This politically motivated movement has now embarked on an orchestrated campaign to suppress voting by Black, brown, young people, and to pass new state election laws, giving the power to throw out huge numbers of valid ballots to highly partisan legislatures, governors, and state attorneys general. Thus, this lie is being used to deprive people of their constitutional rights and constitutes a major injustice.
Thank you. Someone like to read the third paragraph?
As friends, we feel called to speak out against these falsehoods and anti-democratic actions. We encourage friends to seek spiritual guidance on any actions that you and your meetings might take to witness against this gross injustice. If this politically motivated movement succeeds in its anti-democratic takeover attempt, any hope of making significant progress on racial and economic justice, the equality of all people, the climate crisis, gun violence, and other urgent issues of our time will be gone.
We know that democracy in the United States has many flaws. During the past 100 years, our local, state, and federal governments have acted to prevent formerly enslaved people and other communities of color from voting. It was not until 1920 that women finally won the right to vote, and their equality is still being challenged. We call on Friends to act, first, to resist all efforts to undermine our current democratic processes, and second, to support true democratic reforms to our still flawed election system. We cannot allow a government that is built on lies and injustice.
Would anybody else like to read? So people online, if you feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and read that next paragraph.
Well, I can read it.
Thank you.
We, the undersigned, are encouraging Quakers throughout the country to work in their local communities, states, and the national arena to take critical actions to prevent an authoritarian takeover of our democracy. We urge Friends to discern the deep truths that provide a foundation for active love, wisdom, compassion, and a truly democratic electoral system, and then to actively support such changes. We know that love conquers fear. Let us lean into divine love and find ways forward in truth.
Thank you. Great. And the final paragraph, if anyone would like to read that.
I can read that.
Reverse. On the reverse are 2 queries for you and your meeting to consider in response to this call. We've also included a list of specific actions that Friends could begin taking now. Some actions may become necessary later if there is another attempted coup during the next presidential election cycle. Oh.
All right, so that's, thank you for reading that together. So I guess on the reverse side of this, and if you scroll down there a little bit, Terry, there are, on the left column, a couple of queries, and then on the right, a list of possible actions. I guess before we start into those, I know that Peace and Social Concerns had a chance to talk about this call for urgent action at their meeting recently. And I was just wondering if anyone from Peace and Social Concerns might like to sort of tell us what that conversation has been like so far.
Oh, we brought this up in, was it the last meeting or the previous meeting? I think it was the previous meeting and talked about it. And I think, and we read through it just like we just did. And I think, as I recall, we recognized the power of it and felt like it was appropriate for a larger group. That was kind of the conversation, specifically into it, the details of it. From that conversation, I'm not sure I can add a whole lot about the specifics.
Does anyone?
I'll add one other thing, which is that, thank you, that this relates to a minute that this meeting passed. At this point, I guess it was 2020, just prior to the election, the national election, and I'll call that up and read it here. It'll take me a minute to find it though, so. Oh no, here it is, FMA Statement on Election. It's very short. The Religious Society of Friends Quakers advocates for social justice and peaceful change in our democratic republic. We ask everyone here and around the world to join us as we hold in the light all U.S. citizens as they engage in the election process in all states and territories, to cast their votes for the leadership in our national, state, and federal governments by November 3rd, 2020, to count and report those votes securely, and to participate in the Electoral College process. We also ask everyone to hold in the light all those who are barred from voting but will be affected by this election. That's the FMA Statement on Election, Monday, November 2nd, 2020.
Thank you. Are there any further things that we should remember about what we've said and what we've done as a community so far regarding these issues? Great. So I guess maybe let's start with the queries here. So the first query is, what, if anything, is the Light Within calling friends to do in response to the unprecedented rise of domestic extremism, white supremacy, and authoritarianism that is threatening the destruction of our democracy at home and abroad?
Well, one thing is there's this meeting today from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Central Time. Do I need to move my?
No, you're fine. Yeah.
Today, Sunday, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., there is an online Zoom meeting. Do we have the information to share to how to register for that?
Yes, you can register, I believe, at www.quakercall.net. That website is at the bottom of this page with the variants here. If you look down at the bottom of the left column there.
Okay, yeah.
I think you were instructed to register there if you'd like to attend.
And I'll just report that I went to the website to do that, and they're not taking any more registrations for today's session, but there's another one on the 18th of August
Oh,
at
that's
7
great.
p.m., which I've registered for.
Great.
So
So it's worth going to that.
it's worth going to, even if you can't make it today.
Did they record the earlier one? There was one on the 25th.
Oh, I don't know, it didn't say anything about that.
I believe they sent out an update on that. I'd have to look. They came this last week, but I'm not sure. I knew about the second session.
Because this has been in the bulletin for several weeks before the 25th. It was announced ahead of time.
It seems to me that what we're called to do is to not respond in battle mode, but in a sense of understanding, learning, and responding with, they mentioned, with love. And to do that, it seems to me, we need to reach outside of our bubbles, our own little filter groups and communities that we're comfortable with, to interact with, to listen to learn about from people who are representing the sides that we're not so comfortable with. We are not able to connect with them ourselves. That doesn't give us much chance for really initiating change other than on a power basis. And I think learning and listening are a key step in trying to begin resolution, because there are a lot of people who are not at the extremes, but we tend to think about people as at the extreme, and that, I think, inhibits our coming together. There are ways and groups that support that, one of which is Braver Angels that I've become more involved with, and many other groups that are trying to generate conversations and communication across divides.
This is kind of less in the nature of a leading than kind of a sub-query. It strikes me that what saved us from the last coup, at least as to the extent that we were saved, was the incredible bravery and diligence of volunteers and public servants, from the poll workers to the elections officials to to the cops in the Capitol building. That those are the people that really were on the front lines of standing up to the coup attempt. And they're probably the reason why we're not under an authoritarian dictatorship today. And they're going to be, in various ways, depending on who they are and where they are, under tremendous pressure and even physical threat. And so the query I kind of posed to myself is, how can we stand with those folks? How can we help protect polling places? How can we help protect the personal safety of election workers? That's the first thing that occurs to me in terms of confronting the threat. Not the only thing, of course, but I think that's particularly important.
Another thing is to become deputy voter registration people and poll workers ourselves, to be there, put our bodies out there and do it. And we have in the past, in the bulletin also indicated and listed information about how to register for BDR, is that what's called, voter deputy registrar training, both in Williamson and in Travis County. So we try to alert people that that is available and something we should, if we have capacity to do that.
Can I also add that I think it's important for us to stand in local and public solidarity with those who are most at risk of this kind of authoritarianism, white supremacy, and domestic extremism. And so there are just so many areas where this is problematic right now. But I'm reminded again of a minute that the meeting minuted on anti-Semitism in Travis County, which is often rises in anti-Semitic attacks and rhetoric are a little bit like the canary in the coal mine. Once that starts coming, it's not the end of it. And so some of what we need to do isn't just reaching out to those with whom we might disagree, but also reaching out to those who may in fact be at risk and collaborating in ways that might make them safer. I wish I had a suggestion. I guess I'll just add one more thing. I recently took a bystander intervention training, which was about how to intervene when someone is being harassed publicly. And a lot of what I learned in that is about making eye contact, kind of leaning in to communicate with the person who is being victimized, make a human connection, start something that's going to be distracting, but basically sort of be with that person loudly, if that's appropriate, or gently, if that's appropriate. So there are ways of doing this that are not about amplifying the risk to everyone involved, but in fact can help de-escalate or defuse. So those kinds of trainings are, I think, very helpful. De-escalation, training and bystander intervention training.
I signed up to write postcards. I've written letters to potential voters before and sent postcards before, and I received 200 postcards in the mail, and I realized that it would be a whole lot more fun as well as a whole lot easier to do it with other people. So I'd like to offer this as an opportunity. Not today, I didn't bring them with me. Actually, that's not true, they're in the car. But sometime soon. If 200 is divided by 10, it's only 20 each. Divided by 20, that's only 10 each. So I'll let you know when I'm going to bring the postcards, and we can maybe all write what we're supposed to write, because it's a scripted thing. It's not just write whatever you want to write. It's basically a personal message saying thank you for voting, or thank you for registering, and thank you, you know, being personal, and then just signing your first name.
Curious about Joanna. What organization is doing the postcards? And
You know, there's so many different organizations who have sent out notices that I've gotten that right this moment, I have to go to the car to find out, and I can do that. I can go find out what organization it is.
we've already sort of been discussing this indirectly, but I'll go ahead and add the second query in there, which is how can we respond with resolute love, even while I am weak, may be struggling with fear, anger, apathy, or hate?
Taking a nudge from the Friends Committee on National Legislation, if you do something positive, it helps to reduce your sense of helplessness, hopelessness, upset, anger, and frustration. So certainly reaching out to our political representation, whoever, whether it's senators or representatives or city council or school board members, if we reach out and send a message that we think would be appropriate to help resolve the divide to some degree or address the divide, that's a positive step if we frame it not in antagonistic terms, but in supportive terms for what we're looking for. I think that could be very helpful.
Yeah, I've done that with both my congressperson and both of the senators, and in all three cases, their responses have been, oh, thanks for your letter, and by the way, I've done the exact opposite of what you had. So it's kind
And yet the value of your writing and sending a message is that it provides a representation of another perspective than what they've adopted. That has a value, I think.
Do you want to hear what this organization is?
Thank you, Joanna. Yeah.
It's a progressive turnout project initiative. Turnoutpact.org. www.turnoutpact.org. Postcards to swing states. And this is what they look like.
Oh, they give you the postcards.
They give you the postcards, you provide the postage and the handwriting.
So hopefully, just so you know, I can't see everyone who's online. So if anyone does have something they'd like to share, please do feel free to just unmute yourself and go ahead and say what you'd like to share. Great. So I guess we've already had a number of actions that people are currently engaged with. For instance, Tobin's involvement with Better Angels. Erica also mentioned working as a poll worker or sort of helping in these sort of volunteer deputy registrar in one of these counties. Joanna had the postcards that they're sending to swing states. Did you have something else?
Yeah, I want to say Amanda Mortal and I and Larry Vaughn all did volunteer deputy registrar training, and Amanda and I went out on the town and did it, and it was really cool.
Okay.
And the other one, the poll workers, I actually signed up to work, and got paid for it. It was a 10-hour job. It wasn't easy, but it was really, really good. And so that's what I did the last election, no, 2 elections ago, sorry, 2 elections ago. And there's also a different kind of poll worker where you're an observer.
Before we move on from that, just something to consider. I guess these are various actions that we, so far, kind of we're thinking of these as actions that we can take as individuals, I think, with working and volunteer deputy registrar. As we're going forward, I think it would also be good to think sort of in community terms. Are there things that we as a community, as Friends Meeting of Boston, could we engage in any of these activities in a more sort of community way? So I guess they also, the urgent call also contains a long list of actions over on the right column here. And so I think we could just go through sort of these category by category and see these. I guess some of these things are things we've already talked about, as the actions we're already engaged in, but I want to consider them each on their own. So the first off is they list as defending truth. And it says, we urge all friends to discern the deep truths that provide a foundation for active love, wisdom, compassion, and peace in the world. And then to defend them, we ask individual friends to search yourselves about the threats to our country and the world, and to witness publicly to the truths that you discern are grounded in your experience of the Spirit. Quaker meetings and organizations to issue public statements calling out lies and the purveyors of lies, all in the context of our understanding of love, equality and justice for all.
James, I'm wondering if we can take the screen sharing down so we can see us rather than the PDF.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no worries. Yes, absolutely. Terry, please do.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then everybody was home.
This is Liz. I wonder if we want to consider how we would handle it if someone in our community was arrested for some of the things that they did. And I'm just wondering whether that's been considered.
The other thing,
I don't personally know of any consideration that's been given to that. Does anybody else know of anything that has been sort of said or done regarding possible arrests within the community in probably some direct action context?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind for me is that Peace and Social Concerns annual budget certainly be used as a bail bond. Were we to discuss that and agree to it, I don't think that's out of line. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah. I mean, I would think that if we were involved with a meeting activity that we had decided as a community, we would stand behind each other in that. I would think certainly there'd be some discernment that would have to be done. But
Can't hear you, Chip.
yeah, I would think we would support each other, and if there was if we as a community, we were involved with some direct action that resulted in that. And, I'm not sure, Liz, did you have something specific? I'm not really following the question. Maybe you could explain it a little bit
I think I'm thinking of the time during the Vietnam and also the nuclear power movements that we gathered together in affinity, what we called affinity groups, before we did any kind of action like that. And those groups were groups that pulled together people who were willing to actually be arrested and people who were willing to support them in various ways. And I just wonder whether we want to talk about that and whether that would be a useful thing for us as a meeting to offer to maybe some younger friends who would not risk that kind of thing except with some support from the meeting. I mean, I see that might be coming. I don't see it directly coming right now, but if somebody were to get arrested, for instance, for assisting in some sort of action around gay and lesbian rights, or somebody should suffer from that, something from that, how would we support them? Besides benevolence, what kinds of things would we do to help them? And it's not clear in my mind. It's just I raise it because it did come up in the terms of when we were dealing with both the nuclear power movement and also the Vietnam War.
I have a question that sometimes I ponder that's along these lines. And it's how best and how to maintain my attitude of love towards someone who's adamant that the election was stolen. Because I have friends that are in that category. And to me, that's the first step. Because it's more of a building up than tearing down. I found for a while there, for example, going out to Georgetown, very important, terrible statue put in there in 1916, but I realized after a while it didn't feel like it was more us and them. It became divisive into itself. The action of trying to bring justice brought a lot of divisiveness. So it's something I think about. How do we demonstrate love? When I'm playing music with somebody who's telling me that, why don't we just let the red states secede? How do I, how do you maintain a feeling of love when you have that? That's got to be for me, that's got to be the first step. Not that I'm successful with it all the time.
In my experience with conversations across that divide, it helps for me to keep in mind the goal is to maintain some kind of relationship. Once the relationship is gone, I've got nothing that will do any good. So when I think about people who may be feeling threatened or challenged, the more that I challenge them, the more likely they are to hold tightly to their beliefs and their feelings. So instead of while you address the issue that may be there, thinking in terms of interests below the positions and values below the interests, seeking a place where you can, in fact, find some connection, as opposed to trying to convince somebody that their way is mistaken or wrong or dangerous. That works a lot better and is the potential for maintaining some kind of connection that will allow for learning on my part, for example, and possible connection that leads to better outcomes from the way I see it.
Like you say that, Tobin, I think of some of the folks who are like Moms for Liberty and talking about freedom and religious freedom a lot. Their definitions of that is liberty for them and not
Right.
for everyone else.
Right.
Or freedom of my religion, not yours, kind of thing. And that's what gets, that the words getting twisted is really difficult to deal with when you think, well, yeah, we're patriots.
Right.
But it's their definition, the definition that they're using is so antithetical to what I think is being patriotic and being for freedom and liberty. And that's, when the words get twisted, it's really difficult.
I think that one of the, I'm not sure. I think one of those overwhelming things is that this is being hit on us in so many fronts. From the very beginning, when the votes are being when they're making it hard for people to vote, all the way through to when the votes are being counted. It's easy, of course, to concentrate on the January 6th coup, but if we don't focus on all the different aspects of all the different ways that democracy is being endangered now, it's
We have about 10 minutes left here before we need to break before meeting for worship. I guess I just read through the first category of possible actions. There are 3 more. I'm just going to read through those very quickly. No, I'm just being curious if any of these sort of speak to people or inspire other ideas. The second category, actually, Jerry, do you mind screen sharing again? This might be helpful time to do this. So the second category is working for true equality and justice for all. We urge Friends to act for equality and equity within our diverse society. And 3 possible actions they list are joining to support organizations led by people of color, which are working for empowerment of Black, Brown, Indigenous, and Asian people and communities. The second, speak, write, and protest in support of full equality of all people in American society, whatever their racial, sexual, or gender identity or class. Support legislative and economic changes that will lead to actual equity among all people. The next category, the third category, is promoting free and fair elections. Stemming from our testimony of integrity and equality, we urge Friends to 1, support nonpartisan voter registration drives, particularly in communities under attack from those seeking to prevent them from voting. 2, publicly condemn partisan efforts to restrict access to voting. 3, confront partisan efforts to seize control of the election and administration apparatus. 4, support conscientious, nonpartisan election officials in our communities. And 5, volunteer as poll workers, election monitors, and drivers to get people to the polls. The final category, and this is something sort of related to what Liz was talking about earlier, is preparing for nonviolent resistance. We believe that as a religious society grounded in nonviolence, we can, and here are the following actions. 1, initiate discussion on the impacts of voter suppression and new laws, enabling partisan actors to legally throw out our ballots and change the results of elections. Then gamering support for nonviolent resistance against all of this, and forming community-based networks of support for such actions. 2, arrange for nonviolent direct action training in our Quaker meetings and organizations, as well as within others, as well as with others in our larger communities. 3, form small affinity groups. This is, again, similar to what Liz was talking about, affinity groups that can prepare to carry out direct actions in support of free and fair elections, and the state and local officials who support them. And finally, 4, support wider efforts to plan and organize nonviolent resistance on a state and nationwide level as needed. So these are the list of possible actions that have been suggested by this urgent call to the Society of Friends. And I'm wondering if any of these actions speak to people or inspire any ideas.
I like the idea, the discussion about the poll worker and actually providing service to ensure the elections are fair. I've thought about it several times, just have never done it. So hearing that discussion really kind of moves me to think through that some more.
Well, Jim talked about having attended bystander training, and I wonder if there's any kind of group or that we could partner with to provide some type of similar training. Since we have a nice space that could be used for that. That would be more, I don't know that we have the capacity within us, but certainly partnering with some organizations that do have that capacity would be a good step.
I would, for one, would really support that, because I think we're going to need a lot of training. And I worry a lot about the element of physical violence and how to resist that nonviolently. I think back to the last election when a candidate caravan was run off of I-35 by right-wing political actors and trucks and so on, and how there was so little response from law enforcement. Another element of this will be making sure that law enforcement will respond to these things. And it's going to be directed not just against the poll workers and so on, it will be against political campaigners and political figures. And so that's another population we may need to think about standing with and helping in their resistance.
It does sound like we have within our meeting those who've had experience with affinity groups and preparing for and how to handle those situations in the past, and maybe a forum on what the Quaker history with nonviolent responses and actions could be arranged.
I'm wondering about the second bullet of the first item here, which is issuing public statements. I remember early November 2020, our statement came out 2 days before the election, and if we were to do another statement like this that came out in, say, September or October, it might have a little bit more potential for impact. So I don't know, I'm wondering, Chip, if we could add that to the agenda for the next Peace and Social Concerns meeting, and perhaps spend the month of August working on something to bring to meeting force and attention business in September.
And Jimmy raised a good point too, because certainly if there's interest in actionable items out of this, I would very much invite people to come to Peace and Social Concerns Committee meetings in a certain way.
This is Galia, and one aspect I hope will become a part of this discussion is that it's real easy for us to point to things that happened on January 6th as the example of our democracy being at risk. I get that. I also get that there's been some eroding of our democracy for a long time. And that comes from Democrats, and it's come from Republicans, and it's come from people in power. People in power are at risk. The people that are not in power are at risk of having their power, the individual power, taken away. And so I hope that when we have our discussions about this, as we grow and develop in it, that it's not partisan, and that there are things that were going on during the Obama administration that I can give examples of that were eroding individual rights in the voting, where people's rights were taken away. So I just want us to remember that this is not partisan. It's this power that takes away from people who don't have power, and that's across the board. And so that's my 2 cents.
This friend speaks my mind.
I see now that it's just a little bit after 10:50. I imagine this is a large conversation that will continue. And so, as Chip was saying, friends are definitely all invited to Peace and Social Concerns meetings where these topics will continue to be discussed. I also made sure to add possible future forum topics about the history of sort of Quaker affinity groups and nonviolent action. Many ideas for personal action have also been brought up, so I really encourage everyone to continue to look into those as well. So we'll So thank you, friends.